What is up, my ninjas? I am Strident, and I am back with another toy review. This time I am reviewing one of my long-awaited figures from the super dope Thor the Dark World. This is Marvel Select's Thor the Dark World Thor. I love the movie, and I dug both movies a lot more than most people. Thor is my favorite Avenger. Next comes Cap. I've always been a big fan of Norse myth, and I always dug the character because they found a good way to kind of bridge the gap between comics and actual mythology, and shit that makes for an awesome mix, and you get some cool heroes out of it. Thor, he's had a mix of figures as far as quality goes, and Marvel Select has made a couple good ones. Now, my first Marvel Select Thor was the modern age, Age of Heroes Thor. And I liked him, but he wasn't very playable. He was really stiff. His legs could barely move. They were just so tight, and, he felt very light. This figure, on the other hand, not only is the sculpt immaculate, which I'm going to get to in detail, it's just a really well-made toy. It's fun in every area. Now, looking at this figure, you can see how tall he is. I mean, he is a tall figure. He definitely has that, imposing stature that we know Thor to have, And a lot of figures miss this, Sometimes they make him bulky, but they don't make him tall. He's supposed to be, the original, Norse, the Viking gods. They're supposed to be these big, imposing characters, and he is huge and imposing. And because Marvel Select is a 7-inch scale line, the figures tend to be taller already. So this makes Thor even more imposing than he appeared in the films when you have him next to the Marvel Legends versions of the film counterparts. So every ounce of this character, every aspect, every piece, every part is perfectly detailed. They didn't leave out anything. Every piece actually works with the sculpt, it doesn't feel like, or I should say it works along with the articulation, and, the sculpt and the paint work together perfectly, which is what Marvel Select is known for. And it always just blows my mind how underappreciated Marvel Select tends to be, because you go online and you see subpar Marvel Legends figures going for 2 and 3 times the price of Marvel Select figures, only because the Marvel Selects are 7-inch scale, so your OCD collectors don't want 7-inch figures standing next to their 6-inch figures, when there are a lot of larger characters that Marvel Select gets right. And I think the 7-inch scale kind of lends to it. Wolverine, not so much, but that figure's amazing. Thor, on the other hand, he needs to be 7 inches, or even 8 inches, in comparison to your 6-inch figures, because he's supposed to be, unbelievably huge in comparison to the average person, or a regular sized person. Mjolnir is expertly crafted, and that's an understatement, but it looks just like the movie version. The muted grays and the muted silvers on the handle, and the muted brown. It's all there. That was all in the movie. The only thing that it's lacking is it doesn't have the inscription. But I mean, think about how small that inscription would have to be. But everything else, this is on par with like Japanese figures. You know what I mean? The hand holds the hammer perfectly. The hammer itself is weighted perfectly so that when you put him in a pose, it doesn't weigh his hand down or his arm down. There's a subtle black wash on the hammer around the sides, kind of like the edges of the sides, like the strike faces, the 2 strike faces. On the edges of it, there's this cool kind of ornate patterning, that goes around those edges, and there's a black wash to get in there and accentuate all that detail, as well as the lining around the flat sides of the 2 side panels of the actual hammer. But you can kind of see what I was talking about the ornate kind of patterning, or the texturing going on around the strike panels of the hammer. It's pretty nice. And it's just little details like that this is why I like Marvel Select. I mean, most of my Thor figures are Marvel Selects. I think 2 of them are actually Marvel Legends. His face, my God, does this look like Chris Hemsworth? I was surprised. I was like, wow, that really looks like him. I mean, from every angle. And I've heard people bitch about certain figures like the Figma movie Thor, how it doesn't look like him. And I was contemplating getting it, but because it's not big enough, I'm just ignoring it, you know? It'd be nice to have a Thor that's really insanely posable, but you don't need a Thor that's insanely posable because he's a strong guy who poses in strong poses. He doesn't need to be doing Spider-Man type shit, so you don't need all that posability. Not in my opinion. But back to the face. The face, the hair, he's got cooler hair. Everybody in the movie had cooler hair this time around. You know, there were braids and, you know, other things going on. Some people had like dreads going on in places and stuff, which gets on my nerves, but it's more interesting to look at when you're watching a film and the characters have more unique looks from head to toe. His beard, it's pretty nice. The beard looks right. I also like the fact that the shade of his hair and his skin tone they're different enough because the hair is more chromatic. It's more yellowy, you know. It's super blonde, whereas his skin has got the pinkish tone to it. But like side by side, they play well together. They don't look out of place. His expression, I like that it's stern, but it's not too over the top grimace, you know, because sometimes when you have figures that are stuck in those, you know, with those expressions, they look strange if you pose them in a relaxed pose and their mouths are just like, rah! It's like, what is going on with this dude, you know? But here, this works, you know what I mean? It looks like it's an expression you saw Thor have often in the film because he didn't really have to strain very much, except for when he was fighting Malekith in the end, or Curse at the end. But I love it, you know? That's my opinion after I tell you the facts. His armor. Now, I'm not a big fan of taking color out of everything and then turning it black, but I mean, this is a guy with a giant red, bright red cape, and they didn't, like, tone that down at all. And then he's got gold accents all over the place. They kind of simplified because in the first couple movies, Thor 1 and then Avengers, there's a lot of color going on in his suit. Here you have a lot of color. You have blue. You have, and the blue's real subtle. You can kind of see it up there around the crotch joint area. You have silvers. You have gloss blacks and flat blacks and satin finish blacks. You have gold. There's even some brown in there. So there's a lot of colors. It's just they're darker colors in some cases, most cases, that you have to get up on top of him to really, you know, look up close on the figure to really see all those details and, you know, how they play well with all the other parts. But I mean, from a distance, the suit looks amazing. Somehow it just works. And he seems to be like one of the only characters on the team who he's getting that balance, you know? So as I told you before, I'm a Thor fan, so I have a lot of Thor figures. I have more than a few, put it like that. Here is the Hasbro Avengers movie series Thor. He has a custom cape because I hate plastic capes, especially when they get in the way. And this one had funky legs with Y joints, so I needed to give him a better cape so that I could actually pose his legs without the cape getting in the way. But anyway, you can see the change over time. And it's weird too because the movie series armor is kind of the movie series armor as a figure is missing some of the colors and details that were actually present in the movie. Both movies, the first Thor and in the Avengers. Whereas the Marvel Select versions kept all that, but they equally had issues with articulation. And I'm talking about the first movie version. Here, you can clearly see that they're paying attention to the same design aesthetics, you know? You can clearly see one came from the movie and one didn't. Or, I'm sorry, why did I say that? They both came from, you know, the movies, and they're following, they're an evolution of a design. The helmet is kind of funky, though, on that figure. But you can see their face sculpts look pretty close. It's just One feels like an approximation, whereas the other one feels like they were doing their best to capture the actor's actual face, his expression, all the little pieces, the bits and, you know, the details and all that. And it's for the better. It almost feels like, why would you even buy the Hasbro version when you could buy the Marvel Select version? You know, you can still buy the Marvel Select movie Thor, the first movie Thor, for under $50, but you can't find you can hardly find the Hasbro movie Thor for that cheap. It doesn't make sense. It's criminal. Their boots. You can see there was more color in the boots. Well, there was different color, I guess I should say, in the first boots. I think in the movie, though, they had blue in them. But in the newer ones, you know, they're black, gray, brown, and gold. And they're not shiny. They don't have that gloss finish like the previous ones did. I don't mind either one. I like both. The proportions are actually kind of close. It's just that somehow the Marvel Select one comes out way bigger. The bracers are pretty nice too. Those, you know, wrist guards, if you want to call them that. They look nice though, but you can see the evolution. You know, before they were keeping the red in there because that was kind of a design choice that you saw in the first two versions. You know, he had always had red on one of his hands. In the new one, they changed that, and it doesn't bother me at all. His hammer. The hammers almost look identical, except one has a brown handle and like all brown with a black kind of wash going on in there. And it doesn't have like the individual links. You know, it's wrapped in links technically. The individual in between the links, they're not painted and they don't have that beveling or, you know, kind of embossed look with the silver band going around. Now for all of the ones I have, and I think there's still another one in here that I didn't. Yeah, there is another one that's not in this picture, but even my old first appearance Toy Biz Thor is in here, and that was the one I had for the longest time. But you can see how this is Marvel paying attention to the comic designs and then keeping the aesthetics across the board in every different version of the character. And I love that because that's what makes these characters work so well on screen. It's the fact that the designers are saying, you know, there are pieces. I mean, this goes back to that video I did about character design and what works and what doesn't work. You can't make the design so far from the original design and lose all the integrity that it doesn't really register as the same character. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But you can see all the details all across the board from the first appearance, that old school, goofy looking, traditional Thor from, you know, the good old days. He's supposed to have those 6 circular things on his torso. He's supposed to have a red cape, the shoulder pads that stick off of, you know, his shoulders, off of his person, and he's supposed to have, you know, obviously blonde hair and something on his head with wings if he's wearing the helmet. You go to the Ultimate Thor, which I'm going to do a review for him too. I actually got him the same day I got the Dark World version of Thor. Ultimate Thor still has the 6 things, even though they've incorporated other design elements in there. He's still got the 6 circular pieces on his chest. They changed the shoulder pads. He's still blonde. He's still very tough looking. He's still bulky, you know, but the most basic detail is those 6 discs on his torso, and they're there. The Heroic Age Thor. This is the Hasbro version. This is the other Hasbro figure that I have representing Thor. And 6 circular pieces on his torso. Still there. Still got the red cape. Still got the blonde hair. You know, and of course he's got to have a hammer. And he looks the part. This is actually probably my second favorite design. Now here's the Marvel Select version of that same figure, and it's crazy because to some degree it's like you're looking at the exact same figure. I mean, the head is a little bit different. It looks more like Oliver Copiel's artwork, but you can just see the detail. I mean, You see more texturing going on in his chest. Still got the discs on his chest. He's got the silver helmet with the wings. I mean, it's just people paying attention to what they're supposed to be paying attention to as designers, and I dig that. Hammers. This is the part where we compare the hammers. I was going to just put them all down on the ground, but I figure if they hold them up and you see them side by side, it's easier to tell. You can see that the Marvel Select hammer is bigger than the the Hasbro movie hammer, which is pretty cool because, I mean, it means that they're in proportion to one another. The Ultimate's hammer is the most unique hammer of the bunch, and even that is in proportion to, you know, the figure that it goes to. It's still big for that figure, but it's still proportionate to the figure. It doesn't look like a giant battle axe. It just looks like an axe with a hammerhead on the other side. The first appearance hammer is really different, but it's still got that Thor aesthetic. The Heroic Age Thor from Hasbro has elements and like an overall shape of the movie hammer, which is pretty cool because, you know, sometimes artists would they would make the hammer kind of look like a giant brick on a stick. And case in point, this is the Marvel Select version. I put rubber bands around the handle so that he could, you know, hold it and it wouldn't spin in his hand. But you can see they're kind of popping, I guess. But the rubber, I mean, the hammer itself actually looks like just a stone with a stick put through it, which doesn't really give it the majestic approach or appearance that it should have. But, you know, hey. Articulation. This figure, as big as he is, has all the articulation that you would need. And it's by far the best articulation on a Thor figure. Well, of all the Thor figures that I have, it's the best articulation, period. His arm goes up about that much, and there's nothing's stopping it. You can twist at the bicep, because you've got a bicep swivel. It is on a ball disc at the shoulder. There's a single joint at the elbow, and you actually have a pretty decent amount of clearance. I want to say you have about 90 degrees clearance with that, or 90 degree bend, I'm sorry, at his elbow, which works, you know. You would think sometimes that because it's Thor and he's not the most agile character, that they would kind of skimp on how much articulation they give him, but Marvel Select has been getting a lot better with that. His arms can actually go down all the way at his side, and that bend stays the same. You've still got a twist at the, or a swivel at the wrist. It doesn't have, I don't think it has any extra joints, so he doesn't, like, you can't move the hand up and down. It just stays that way, and you can swivel it. I don't know if he was supposed to come with extra hands. I got him loose, but, you know, he came with the hammer, and that's all I cared about. But there's the side view, so you can see the swivel is at the wrist. It's not at the gauntlet. You know, it's not like a glove swivel. Once again, there's his hand at his side. That's his hands all the way down. It looks very good. I mean, it looks relaxed, and it's kind of the positioning or the posing that you saw Mr. Helmsworth in the film. His arms never quite came all the way down to his sides. You know what I mean? He's a big dude. At least now he is. His head, that's his head looking down. I should have started with forward, but, you know, like I said, I'm showing you what it can do. It doesn't really go down that much. The hair actually is really soft, so any pose you put it in, the hair actually tends to work with it. So that's looking down. That's looking forward. Another trick is that he has really good torso articulation. So if you do want to really make him look down at someone, you can use the torso joint in addition to the ball-socketed, head joint or neck joint, and he'll look the right way. You can tilt his head to the side if you want. Give him that confused look, like, are you crazy? You really wish to test my mettle? He just looks, I don't know, you can emote really well with him, I guess is what I'm getting at. And I love the fact that they gave him just enough hair. Turning to the side doesn't bother. Doesn't, you know, there's nothing stopping you from turning it to the side. I don't do the 360-degree turn with the head because nobody's neck or head needs to do that unless you're some kind of robot or unless you're possessed or some shit, you know what I mean? You really don't need to do that under any other circumstances. You're just turning the other way. You know, so your left-right movements, no problems. The hair gets out of the way. It's fine. It's good. For a big character, they did a really good job. They didn't really, you know, they didn't skimp. So this is the torso movement. Pay attention to the cape because I didn't do a custom cape on him yet, so he's got the rubber cape. When I shift his upper torso, because he's got a diaphragm joint, when you shift the upper torso to the left or the right, the cape will do tell the tale. It will turn in the opposite direction. You get what I'm saying? It'll shift to the other direction. So look at it. Slight tilt. I did a slight tilt to the left before. Now I'm doing it to the right. Well, my right. It'll be your left or his left, my right. You can kind of see it's a decent amount of shift to the sides. When you're leaning him forward, though, it's subtle, but it's enough, especially given the armor. It doesn't look bad, you know? It looks like a big guy in some pretty powerful armor leaning forward. And it doesn't look bad. To me, it looks natural enough. I prefer the ab crunch. A lot of people I hear have issues with one or the other. And I only like diaphragm joints when it works with the sculpt, which in this case, the diaphragm joint really works with the sculpt overall. It actually looks like he's bending forward, and it doesn't look like there's a big obvious joint sitting in his chest. You know, a lot of times Hasbro will just put the joint obviously in his chest. Here he is standing up straight. All this stuff is self-explanatory. This is why I shot it this way, because I wanted you guys to be able to see really quickly what the you know, articulation looks like. And, you know, while we're looking at that, I can, you know, do my little commentary and put my 2 cents in. But like I said, all the movement is really natural. It's somewhat like, it's like reserved SH Figuarts-ish movement. I mean, you've got swivels, you've got ball joints, you've got bends and discs and stuff in the right places. And there's a lot more ball joints here than what we typically get with the figures, with various figures. That's about how high he can move his foot or his leg up. You can't move the leg up really in front because the loincloth piece, tunic piece, whatever, is hanging down in front, and it will push against his legs. And it's kind of sculpted all around that. That's how far back you can bend the double joint at the knee. There is a thigh swivel right after his hip joint. You have a, you know, at the top of the thigh you have a cut swivel, so you can get some decent movement, as you can see. So, you know, flying poses, not a problem at all. He can easily bend that knee or bend both knees and take to the skies if you need him to. And another cool thing is, you know, when Thor flies, he's flying based on the hammer. There were a lot of cool sequences in the film where he would just jump and then catch the hammer and be propelled in the direction the hammer was going, you know, because he's hanging on for dear life almost. And it was awesome to see it. Like, there was one scene where he was wearing different clothes. He was wearing like that blue cloak, you know, when he was walking around. He was talking to his mother or someone on the balcony, and then you hear that there's a fight going on elsewhere. I think it was in the jails, and he just did this weird twist off the balcony and caught Mjolnir and just kept flying. It was awesome. But anyway, so as you can see, he's got swivels, or what do you guys call it, ankle rockers or ankle pivots in his feet, which is pretty awesome. It seems like ever since Colossus, Marvel Select has been using those, and it looks really good. Have you guys seen the Cable and Carnage that we're supposed to be getting next year? My God, I can't wait. But anyway, the ankle pivots and ankle rockers, whatever you call them, they work really well because he likes to cock back his arm, get in those dynamic poses like he's about to wreck shop with that hammer, and it really helps make things look more dynamic and more powerful, and it looks like shit is going down once you get him in those poses. And with the one open hand, which is why I wish he had extra hands, because Thor punches with the other hand, and now I have to make him slap if he's gonna fight, you know? How can he slap? I need for him to, it would be nice if he had a fist, you know, maybe they could have given you extra hands. I don't know. I'm still just happy to have the figure, and I didn't pay much for him either. I think I paid 15 bucks or 14 bucks for him. So I can't complain. But overall, like I said, all this articulation, it's very natural looking articulation. The figure looks thorough. He looks like the guy from the film. The suit is accurate. None of the poses make him look like a toy. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that stands out with good engineering on an action figure, is that you can pose them and the poses look very natural and very, you know, realistic, I guess, you know. The joints move the way that the human body moves. I mean, unless you choose to overextend or twist or turn in a different kind of way that the human body doesn't do. But if you choose to follow the paths given, you will have very natural, heroic expression. Overall, this figure is just pure win. My only gripe is that I wanted an extra set of hands, you know, possibly even an extra head, but mainly extra set of hands. That is the only thing I wanted, and that's more preferential based on what I did get. There's detail out the wazoo. The cape is made out of a decent kind of hard plastic, well, malleable plastic, but it's hard enough that he could lean on it if you need him to. And when I put him next to the other movie figures, you know, of his fellow Avengers, he doesn't look out of place. Even him being a different scale, and this is something I tend to do that I don't see most people doing. They always have to buy all the other guys to fit with him because they were made by the same person. I don't need, or the same company. I don't need that. Thor, if you've been reading comics, he's always been bigger than your average character. You know, he's taller than Cap, much taller than Cap, much taller than Iron Man, fully suited up. That's the point. He's a big-ass guy because he's a Norseman. Vikings were supposed to be huge, and he's a Viking god. So he's supposed to be like this enormous guy. But look at the difference, you know, with them all standing together in action poses. He's bigger, but he's not like Hulk big, you know? And I like that. And he should be able to stand up to the Hulk and not look like a shrimp, because the Hulk is huge, but so is Thor, you know? So overall, this figure's made of wind. He's very posable, very well painted, well sculpted. It's just a dope figure, you know? If you see this one, get him. A lot of comic book stores, for some reason, did not have this figure. And if they did, they had him for a very short period of time, because I never saw him in my comic book store. I saw him at that cool, you know, secondhand store, Big Fun. So anyway, this has been my review of the Thor the Dark World Thor figure. He's made of wind. If you see him, get him. You will not be sorry. And that's it for me. You've been great. Peace outside.